Good morning and welcome to Carolina Cares, an iHeart Media production. My name is Tyler Ryan, your host, originating from the flagship group of stations in Columbia, South Carolina on the South Carolina Radio Network. So the United Way, the footprint of the United Way is huge. You can't really do anything of community worth and community value without really being touched by the United Way. They're such a community partner in so many different ways, over 1,000 United Way organizations just around the country alone. And we certainly are lucky to have a very big footprint here in South Carolina. So coming up, and I need you to mark your calendars right now, unless you're driving, I would like you to go ahead and take your phone out, mark down Tuesday, October 22nd, that's this week, 7 to 9 at the Columbia Museum of Art, a very, very special presentation, concert and conversation with Peter Buffett. And this morning, Peter Buffett joins us here on the radio. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
That was a heck of a lead-up, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Now I have to live up to something.
Well, and I want to thank you for joining us this morning. I know you're not planning to be in town, obviously, till the 22nd for this very cool show, but we wanted to take the opportunity to get to know you a little bit, really learn more of you're very dynamic, as I'm learning things you've had your hand in through the years and continue to do so. And I find the background fascinating as well. You, of course, are Warren's son, not to be confused with Jimmy's brother. Right.
But that's right. And considering most of my life was in the music business, I was often mistaken for Jimmy's something. Cousin, nephew, brother. Right.
So it's safe to say you've heard that and been asked that before.
I have.
Okay. Wow. What's it like? What's it like growing up with Warren Buffett as dad?
Well, that's actually why I ended up doing this show, because nobody knew, including me, in terms of what my dad did. Nobody knew who my dad was when I was a kid,
right?
And even into my 20s, honestly. And so as I got older and he became more well-known, and specifically the last 20 years or so, people would say, wow, you're Warren Buffett's son, you're so normal. And I thought,
well, how are you supposed to be?
I mean, exactly. First of all, what's normal? And second of all, that's very kind. And, I just thought, among other things, and I know we'll get into it, but kind of talking with people around how I was raised and the values. And, I went to public school. I had the same English teacher my mother had at Central High in Omaha.
Wow.
All these very normal things. And people have these projections. We do this with everybody, right? We project kind of what we think their life must be like because of who they are now, and forget that, most lives start out the same. I mean, we all, and then they grow into these various things. But, life growing up with him was, again, surprisingly normal. And you'd find the same thing today. He's 89. And if you walked into our house in Omaha, where he still lives, where I grew up, you'd see the same guy I saw when I was 8.
Wow.
It's kind of amazing.
It's very cool too, that if you've got, you have those opportunities, and yet you're always grounded. I think that speaks to your dad's, foundation as well, right? Trying to make sure that, wildly successful, certainly, certainly a nice life, but really to keep that grounding for his kids so they understand that. Would that be fair to say?
Totally. Yeah. And that would be, I got to throw my mom in here too, because between the two of them, they were incredible. My dad came home every day. He still does, every day at the same time. We all had dinner together at the dinner table. It was, we did not know what he was doing. I mean, honestly, there's a funny story where my sister in grade school, we all had to, put father's occupation on some form at some point. And my mom told her, well, you can put security analyst because, that's a name for what he did, certainly in the 60s in particular. Mm-hmm. And so she wrote that down, and everybody thought he checked alarm systems. Because nobody knew what that was. And, he wasn't buying houses and cars and, boats and all this kind of. So we didn't see any aspect other than we always had food on the table and, we could get new clothes if we needed it or something, but it was just a normal life.
Sure. Now, do you have you brothers and sisters? What's the family dynamic?
Yeah, so I am the youngest of three. I have an eldest sister and a middle brother and then myself. Mm-hmm. for all you that are the youngest, yay for that, because your parents by then are sort of worn out. Do whatever you want. It works out pretty well.
They've done it already. They've seen it. You're just whatever. Yep. Go ahead, Peter. You do your thing.
Yeah, you're kind of along for the ride at that point.
Speaking with Peter Buffett here on Carolina Cares, coming to town. This is a really cool thing, and I do want to get some of your background, but just want to let folks know again. The 22nd, Tuesday, 7 to 9 at the Columbia Museum of Art. A very cool. It's not a conversation. It's not a concert. It's an event, I suppose, because it's not one or the other. But a concert and conversation with Peter Buffett.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's hard to describe, and that's the fun of it for me, because I have been in music all my life, right? So I enjoy creating things, making something that might be different than what people have seen or heard before. And this show seems to do that, because I will say, and that's kind of the hardest part about it, is that people aren't quite sure what they're coming to see, and every time people leave going, wow, okay, I didn't expect that. That was really cool, or whatever they say. But they, it's something different. And I play music. I have an extraordinary cellist. It's myself on piano and a cello player who is worth the price of admission. And we play songs throughout, but it's mostly a conversation. So I will talk about various things, and we can get into some of that in terms of growing up or experiences in my career, and then the philanthropic work and all these various, again, things I've learned, observations, whatever. But I take questions through the whole show, and that's the most fun. So people can literally ask me anything at any time, and it makes for a different show every night, essentially. Sure. And I think it's a lot of fun for everybody. And
that's what I was going to ask. Obviously, if you're having an actual conversation, not a monologue. I suppose you probably have your talking points, but it could really it's not writable, right? You're just going to have that back and forth.
Yeah, exactly. So I show lots of images, again, from childhood or different commercials that are kind of funny that I've done. One of the favorite things that I show later in the night is a image of my dad's report card from middle school, which is I'm not going to tell you anymore. You have to come to see it. But
fair enough.
So there's all sorts of little moments throughout that get people thinking about a lot of things, and that's the fun of it, because then I get to hear what's on people's minds, and we talk about it.
Sure. And this, and folks, this is a really special event too. There's about 1,000 United Way offices around the country, and you're only doing this at 22. Are those numbers right?
Yeah. Yep. That's right. Although they seem to keep multiplying as we go, because it's working, and it's working because everything you said. The United Way is so embedded in community, and I've been doing the show for a long time, and we formed this partnership about a year and a half ago. And it's just been fantastic, because I get to learn more because of my philanthropic work. I get to go into communities. They get to show me what they're doing in any particular place, and hear from people and talk about issues and all that. So I get to learn a lot. And then at the show, of course, I get to talk about the importance of community and the critical nature of, really, in the time we're in particular, to think about community first. Because in the end, whatever we're going through, and it's a crazy time in the world, but our neighbors are going to matter, and getting along with them is going to matter. And the United Way is this great, like you said, they've been around forever. They touch so many lives, and what a great partnership for us. I get to learn, and they get to have a cheerleader out there telling everybody that community is where it's at.
What do you think the basic tenets of the United Way are, that why they're so successful as an organization, as a partnership? And I think anyone who deals with United Way, that's truly what they are, as a partner, because they have so many different different wings and fingers that touch so much. But why do you think the United Way has been able to find that success in that partnering and the community support?
Well, I think part of it is that they are also changing and growing with the times. That's what I've noticed is, everybody in the old days, United Way was, I think, a way to essentially give at the office, right? You knew that a little bit of your paycheck was going to help your community in different ways. And it was a little more maybe disconnected, not in the United Way, but the relationship between the donor, which would be anybody, and the work that they were doing. And that's changed. And that's what's been exciting to see is because they do have their hands in so many things, they're starting to see what value they can bring to pull these organizations together and start to work together and create kind of larger strategies based on these individual things that all these wonderful people are doing in so many different communities. And so, their success, I think, lies in their ability to grow and change with the times, and also their long-term connection to the community where they can see what's been going on and what's been changing and who's doing great work and how to connect the dots. So it's been really impressive to see, because every United Way is going to be different because they are individually run in the community they're in, and so to go from place to place and see these consistencies and how important they are has been fantastic.
That's great stuff. Peter Buffett joining us on the phone this morning, but coming to town on the 22nd, 7 to 9 for the concert and conversation with Peter Buffett. Hey, Peter, let's talk a bit about your philanthropy and your work. I know that you and your wife help organize, I guess, started and are very much a part of the Novo Foundation. Did I say that right?
Yes, Novo, yep.
Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, so we, we're just kind of bumbling along in our lives, Jennifer and I was doing my music, and she was being incredibly supportive and doing her own stuff as well. And then my dad, in 2006, did what I call the Big Bang. He decided to give all his money away. And that was for a variety of reasons, really the main one being that he thought that his job, because he loved it so much, was to just make a lot of money because, and again, he didn't do anything with the money. He just loved his job of investing and analyzing and all this stuff. And it was making a lot. And he figured my mom would just have the job of giving it all away. And of course, he assumed that she would outlive him because most women do outlive their husbands. And she didn't. She passed away unexpectedly in 2005. And so that created this situation for him where it's like, well, I still want to give this all away. How do I do it? And so my siblings and I all were the recipients of very large gifts from my dad for foundations. Now, we had a smaller one before that because my parents both knew that we might want to be involved in philanthropy in some way. And so we learned some things, but nothing prepared us for 2006 when we got this huge gift. And that's when the Novo Foundation was really born. And that allowed Jennifer and I to experience things, go to places in the world, talk to people we'd never otherwise meet. I mean, all these things that came out of this huge responsibility that we were, excited, sort of the wrong word, but certainly willing and ready or trying to do our best to do what we could to make the world a little bit better based on putting some resources out there. And so in the first few years, we had just moved to New York City, and now we live up in the country, just to let everybody know we're no longer in the city, but it was a great place to meet people and learn things and go places. So we ended up, instead of the usual vacation destination, which we may have done, 10 years before, now we're going to Liberia and Bangladesh and Sierra Leone and seeing things that in a strange way, or maybe not, we're really not supposed to see. I mean, here we are in this wonderful country and we have all these opportunities and all this choice. And then you go and you see, frankly, where most of our T-shirts come from, if you're in Bangladesh, or, you see kind of the underpinnings of this machine that is the global market. And you start to see how dysfunctional it is for so many people. And it changes your life forever. I mean, you just don't see the world the same way. And so Jennifer and I are trying our best to figure out what can we resource to, I mean, again, the simplistic thing is to say to make a better world, but specifically to try and undo a lot of the forces that have created a not so great world for so many people. And those are big forces. So it's not an easy thing, but we're seeing it, I think, probably because of the internet more than anything else. We're all seeing things more than we ever have before.
Right.
It sounds kind of crass to say, but in the old days, in the 60s, you'd be eating dinner and somebody would say, well, finish your dinner because there's someone starving in India. That was literally something someone would say. Mm-hmm. Well, now you see that, and you can see where everything's going and who's hurting and all this stuff. And so we're all more sensitized. And so to be in this position of having resources to try and shift the tide in some way is a little bit overwhelming, frankly, because no amount of money is going to fix the problem. Right. But if we can help, we're trying.
Sure. And I think that maybe a lesson you learned from your dad, too, is that money doesn't fix everything. It certainly helps to have resources and needs and things, but there's a lot more to it. There's also the humanity side, the humanitarian, the heart, the passion behind it, not just writing a check, right?
Absolutely. I mean, philanthropy, first of all, means the love of people. There's no money in that word. It's all about love and people. And I also am kind of this living example because even though my dad made all this money, he wasn't using the money to try and make him feel better about himself, again, by buying stuff or, having people do things for him or all these things. So I saw firsthand the difference between money just as a byproduct, really, of him doing what he loved every day versus mine make up for something and fix something. And because, ultimately, the money can help. I have this funny saying at the foundation. I say that the Novo Foundation is trying to put money out of its misery because money is, it's held back and people hold on to it because they're afraid and they don't think they'll have enough, while other people are just hurting. And so it's the compassion and the love and the caring that whether it's money or time or expertise or whatever it is, you release that to help other people and, everybody's better off essentially.
Mm-hmm. So philanthropy, if I'm tracking you right, Peter, it is sometimes gifting and donations, but it also really is that gift of time that has absolute infinite value, correct?
Absolutely, yeah, because you can't make more time. You can make more money, but time is the most valuable thing. And so people, that's why things like Big Brothers and Big Sisters or whatever mentoring programs, anything where you can just be present for someone and show them that you care and you're connected to something that matters to them. I mean, it's so much more valuable than money. But again, money also helps in a lot of situations.
Sure. Speaking with Peter Buffett, Concert and Conversation with Peter Buffett is the show you're hosting along with United Way. That's coming up Tuesday, the 22nd, 7 to 9, the Columbia Museum of Art. If you want to register for this amazing, really one of 22, I suppose, but one of a kind experiences.
Right, one of a kind, because it's going to be unique to where I am. Yep.
So you can go to uway.org/future. So, Peter, I want to hear more about some of your work in movies. I understand we've all seen Dances with Wolves, and I'm a Costner fan. I just am. I love his movies, his baseball work. In fact, his new show on Epic or whatever it is, where he's a rancher, modern day rancher called Yellowstone. It's phenomenal. It's shot like a film. It's a TV show. I've always liked him, but I say all that to say that you actually worked on Dances with Wolves in that famous fire scene.
Yes, exactly. So Kevin, I'm going to give away one of my favorite lines in the show, but I was in the 80s and 90s writing music for commercials day and night. It's what I did for a living. I loved it. It was a service industry, really.
What are your two favorite commercials you wrote? Do you remember?
Well, one of them I show at the show next Tuesday, so I won't tell you that one, but it's pretty funny. And I did so many, honestly, I can't even tell you. But that was the fun of it, is everyone was different. Everyone was a challenge. Sometimes the client, the ad agency person, would be sitting in the room with me while I had to come up with stuff. And so it was just this great challenge. And at the same time, me doing music. So I was able to do what I love, but really be challenged by these commercials. And yet I loved writing music for something. You know, it was fun to not just, I was never in a band in high school. I never really was focused on songs about myself. I liked supporting something with the music. And selling a product is challenging and fun, but telling a story, you know, getting into film and television and that kind of thing, that felt more, it just had more depth or something for me. And so I was hoping that I could get my music into the hands of directors and film editors. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to put out records.
Right.
And in the 80s, New Age music was becoming popular, and I'd been writing instrumental music my entire life, and childhood, really, just making up songs at the piano. And I thought, oh, maybe this is my little niche, and I can get some records made, but it's not really about the record. It's really about getting into the hands of film directors and things like that. So I did get a record deal, very fortunate to do that, and my first record came out, and it did fine, and people seemed to like it and all that, but that, for me, that wasn't the point. And my second record was due, and I had read this book called Son of the Morning Star, which is about Custer and westward expansion and Indian wars in the 19th century and stuff. And I had never learned any of that stuff in school. You know, I was just blown away by the history I'd never learned. And I grew up in Omaha, you know, and so you'd think I'd have some background.
Some tie out there, right?
Yeah. And so I wrote this album based on feelings that I had after reading this book, and then I was watching Entertainment Tonight one night, and they were doing this special around this movie that Kevin Costner was making. And, of course, it was Dances with Wolves. It was all about Native people and all these things, and I thought, oh, my gosh, this is my break. I have to get my album to Kevin because I know he'll connect with this.
Now, did you have a prior relationship with Kevin, or were you just saying, you know what, I'm just going to send this into him? Dear Kevin Costner, Hollywood, California.
Right. Well, here's the story. So I did not know Kevin, you know, and again, people think, oh, Warren Buffett's son, he must have all these connections, but that's just totally not true. And how am I going to get my music to Kevin? And I remembered that I'd gone to school with a guy who married a woman whose father was Costner's agent's best friend. and of course, That's how it works, right? You find some little thread, and my little cassette tape made it down to lunch in Beverly Hills with the agent, and Kevin called me and actually said, I want you to score Dances with Wolves. I mean, he wanted me to do the whole film, and of course, you know, I'd scored a few student films and maybe a documentary, but this was an epic Hollywood movie. And to add to that, Kevin had never directed. It was 3 hours. It was about Native people. It was subtitled. You know, everybody thought he was crazy. And it was $100 million. And so when I came along, because music's always kind of the last bit of the film, the producers basically, you know, we went back and forth and I did some demos and stuff, but they said, you're not going to take a risk. We're too far in with this thing, and this guy's never done this before. So I lost it. I didn't get the film, and of course I was upset, but at that time we didn't know how big the film was going to be. You know, I'd never seen any of it. We were just in negotiation about this. And so I would have been way more upset had I known how big it was. But Kevin called a couple months later and asked if I was busy, and of course I said no, and which was very sweet. He led with that, but and he said, there's a scene I want you to score. We think you're the right person for it. And so I got this perfect little piece in a film that, of course, went on to, you know, great heights.
My goodness.
And the little bit I got was the scene pretty much everybody remembers. And so I thought, well, you know, that's the perfect amount for me. I can do that. And, you know, and then you get to go to the Academy Awards and you get, you know, it's just a whole fun journey after that. Do you,
and you mentioned you hadn't, obviously you were in the pre-stages when you were discussing initially with producers about scoring the entire film. But obviously after you get the gig, after Kevin says, hey, you busy? I need you to do something for me real quick. Hey, do you get to see the film? What are you looking at when you're coming up with this? I'm presuming you're watching it and being inspired, or is it the other way around?
Yeah, no, and that specifically with this scene, although it's true with any scene really, is that at that point, any composer is going to be looking at the scene and trying to get the pacing of it and, the emotion of it and all of that. So you're watching it and really kind of getting into it. And with this scene, there's no dialogue, so it's all music and action, which is a great thing for a composer because, great, there's a moment there. And it's action because he's dancing around the fire, so you have to get the rhythm of it, and there's nothing to reference it. So you're just watching him and and you literally watch it over and over and over, and pretty soon it starts to talk to you, I guess. I mean, it's because you get the pacing, but then there's also the story, which is that Kevin was being transformed in that moment from his old self to his new consciousness. And so to also capture what that would feel like in music, that's the real challenge, is getting the emotional part. But to have to tie that to a rhythm because he was dancing and then, in this moment where there's no dialogue telling you anything, I mean, it has to all be music and visual. It was incredible. And the short answer to your question is you watch it over and over and over.
Now, you obviously, did you get to see the rest of it so you understand how transformative this moment, how pivotal this is? I mean, did you understand the gravity of this scene? Obviously, you couldn't tell how wildly amazing it was going to be, but I mean, did you kind of understand that's where you were going?
Well, yes and no, because I didn't see the rest of the film because they didn't want the film out in the world, right? So they only sent me this little bit of, they sent me more than just the scene. They sent me a reel, basically, which is about 20 minutes. So you get some moving in and out of it. But I had read the script, but of course the script, I had read that quite a few months before, and it changes, and scenes change when they're shooting it and all that kind of stuff. So I had a sense, but the truth is, I didn't know for sure until there was a screening at the premiere. Like there was this Hollywood premiere, and I was fortunate enough to play at that premiere, which was fun. I did a live thing there, but I still hadn't seen the movie. I mean, the funny thing is, I read the review, and the review actually mentioned my scene, which was very exciting, but I hadn't seen the movie yet. And so a couple days later, they did a screening for various people involved in the film, and that's the first time I went, "Oh my God,
sure,
this is a moment."
That's amazing. Speaking with Peter Buffett, Peter's going to be in town on the 22nd, 7 to 9 in Columbia. Certainly worth the drive from wherever you're living and here in South Carolina on Carolina Cares. Certainly worth the drive to the Columbia Museum of Art on Tuesday. 7 to 9 is the time. You can register online at uwa.org/future. But I'm going to come anyway just to listen to you, and I know you've got crazy, wild, wonderful stories, and I think it's going to be a really, truly amazing evening with you.
Thank you. I mean, I will guarantee that you're going to get things out of it that you didn't expect. That happens, I think, pretty much with everybody, and there's funny stuff in there. There's heavy things, honestly, from the foundation work, and I go a lot of places, but it's fun to take the audience with me, and also have the audience take me with them. I mean, that's really what it's all about.
Great stuff. And of course, all helping the partnership with the United Way. And again, folks, very special. There's 1,000 United Way's offices around the country. 22 are the number that Peter's going to have a concert and conversation. And we're lucky enough in Columbia to be one of those 22. My friend, thank you so much for sharing just a little snippet of your life and maybe a little bit of the show too. But certainly it'll be a really great evening. I can tell you're very passionate about it as well. So I really, really appreciate your time this morning, Peter.
Thank you so much. Likewise. Really great to be here. Thank you.
This has been Carolina Cares, an iHeart Media production. We'll put links for you just at the WVOC. Just go to that Carolina Cares tab, and we'll get you hooked up, links over to not only the United Way, but also to Peter and the Novo Foundation and his fantastic work as well. Thank you for joining me this morning on Carolina Cares. My name is Tyler Ryan, and I'll speak with you in 7 days.